Citywide is important to me because I'm able to help and be part of the change of some of these students, to be able to help challenge them and challenge myself, to watch these students grow and um, become leaders to this community, to be able to give back. I feel like that's something that our community has been lacking for so many years, of these students and these community folks being able to come back and care about the younger generation. And I think that's one of the reasons why I was one of the people who helped build Citywide, because I want to be able to change the dynamics and the story that has been written for a lot of Latinx students. The reason why I'm so passionate about it is because I was one of those students. I was one of those students that everybody wrote off. I was one of the students who people said that I was just going to be a criminal, that said I was going to be a dropout. My older brothers, they were great students. Unfortunately, one of them ended up taking his life, and it kind of started. It was easier for other people to already start taking our pen and figuring out what's going to be the rest of our lives. Once my other brother got incarcerated after he graduated high school, that was it. That was the story that was in line for myself. And that's something that I want to be able to help these students and show them that they are able to do something more than what society has told them, or something more that their sometimes parents aren't supportive. Sometimes the community isn't as supportive to a lot of these students and writes them off completely, but don't understand or see the talent that a lot of these students have. Throughout this time in this journey of being inside of Citywide Mecha, I was able to see the different talents that each of these students have. Some students are great artists, some students are great speakers, some students have just something special that they're able to continue to give to folks, to families, to the communities, and more importantly, to each other. Citywide is important because it's a family that, in a community that these students were able to build for themselves. That's something that I didn't grow up with. I felt like something when I was growing up, I was always seeing what crowd was there. You had the gangster kids. You had whether you had to fit into one of these boxes, and you couldn't be all of them. And I felt like I was pushed into a box that wasn't even a person of who I was. Something that was a talent that somebody saw in me was poetry, and that's something that I never thought I was going to be able to be a part of. I remember my mentor ended up putting in my poem into a contest, and I got second place in the state. That was something so different for me, and it was eye opening, showing me that I could be something more than what people said. That I was a screw up, that I was gonna be anything. They were just waiting for me to get arrested. And with Citywide, it's able to flip that narrative and flip that script, and it gives us the pen and it gives us the power to be able to write the chapters to our story and continue to write these pages of who we are and who we're gonna be, not who we're supposed to be or what other people want us to be. It's who we want to be. I first got involved with Citywide Mecha. I got contacted by a couple students from Thurston High School that wanted to start a chapter at their school. I got a phone call, and I was really interested of seeing how it was going to look at a high school level. I went to Springfield High School, so already in my mentality was that rivalry. Oh, Thurston. But then I realized, why not Thurston? Everybody was telling me to like folks in the community when I was asking them about where should we start a chapter, where should we be helping students, and everybody kept saying Springfield because there was more Latino students. But even growing up, nobody really focused on what was going on in Thurston. Were there Latino students at Thurston? Were there problems at Thurston? So when I got contacted, I was really curious. So a colleague of mine, Manuel Mejia in Cuitualac, we decided to go to Thurston and see what type of things do these students deal with on a daily. And one of the first days there, there was a comment from an instructor that was like, "Oh, we're not racist," and it was our first conversation that we had with them. It wasn't even like hello yet. It was like, "Oh, we're not racist." Like, "Oh, cool, that's interesting." And then we're like, "Well, my name is Johanis," and then we continued from that. And then once we met the students, a lot of the students didn't even know what Mecha was. They heard it was about history and culture, but what they thought was whether Tamale Tuesdays, that we sold tacos on a certain day, or Cinco de Mayo. And it was really interesting, like hearing the feedback that we were getting from a lot of these students of what they thought being Latino was. And then at that moment, we knew like we wanted to do something, but we screwed up. We had a presentation full of probably like 30 students, but my colleague and I, we came off like professors. We were giving so much information, like, and it went right over all these students' head. And when we asked for questions, they're like, "Oh, we didn't understand anything of what you just said." And that's when we started thinking about like, how can we be able to connect to these students? Like, we're so far disconnected from our community. We've been so institutionalized within within the college that we were at, that we forgot about the community. So we wanted to teach them in a way that they could be able to understand, in a way that they could be able to challenge themselves, and not only that, but challenge us. So we started teaching ethnic studies classes to a lot of these students. It was a lot smaller than when we first started, when we had those 30 students. And it was powerful to see how some of the students really resonated with a lot of the material that we were giving. Like the seeds that we were able to throw out to them and water them once a week. It was amazing to see those seeds blossom into something so amazing. By the end of it, we ended up having 5 girls at Thurston. And it was a strong group of girls who started realizing there's a lot of racism and discrimination within their school. They have a courtyard that was called the Beaner Courtyard. That a lot of students would reference, and same with some teachers. And that's a problem. And throughout the time, they didn't realize that wasn't the first time that it's been going around. It's been going around for like 20 years, 25 years. That courtyard even now, it's still called the Beaner Courtyard. And at the time, the students ended up taking pictures of the police officer that was there, the 2 principals, and a couple of the teachers that were standing there. And the students started realizing, why are the Latino students the ones getting in trouble if somebody writes something on the wall? The Latino students were the first ones to get pinpointed, even if it was an Anglo student or another student with a different ethnicity. But the first target was always the Latino students. These students ended up walking during lunch to go get food, and next thing you know, some students ended up getting zip-tied by the police officer because they were suspicious and they were a gang. So we started getting more involved, and we didn't know exactly how we could be able to help besides give information and let the students do the rest, because during that time we were still learning. How can we be advisors? How can we best help these students in some ways? Should we do a rally? Should we do this? But at the end of the day, it was up to the students, and the students refused because of retaliations that they were afraid of. During that time, they started challenging some administrators where we ended up getting called into the office and we were pushed out. At that time, my colleagues and I were like, well, what do we do now? Should we just end the program? Should we just stop teaching these students? And we got contacted by the students, and they asked us, let's continue to meet. But we didn't have a location. So they're like, it's all right, we can meet at parks. So there were days when it was raining, thunderstorms and whatnot, but we still met. We still organized, we still taught some of the classes, and the students were still interested. And we kept getting more Thurston students to be able to become part of it, and even middle school students. But yeah, we used to meet at parks, and rain or shine, we were always there. We didn't have that much of a budget, and at the time, I wasn't really working. I was still I was a student. I was in my last year at Lane Community College to be able to transfer over. And during that time, I hit a hard hit at Lane. And I felt like I wasn't able to give enough to the students. So I started bringing in more people. Roxana Perez Sanchez, she was one of the people who helped me start the program. And we ended up trying to figure out where can we send these students to be able to challenge them and really start looking at a post-secondary education. So we heard of a conference called the Raza Unida that is hosted at the U of O. And we had these students feel what it means to be on a college campus and get that feel of like, you can be here too, like this seat belongs to you. And that's when a lot of the students started realizing college, because some of these students never even thought about going to college, whether one or two of them maybe, but not them as a whole. So after the Rasanida conference, we faced another downhill. It was like more obstacles and more obstacles continued to start happening, more barriers of trying to split up the group. But the students fought through it.